Welcome, friends, to Tacked Up, the podcast all about video games and beer. I'm one of your hosts, Ben, here with Aadil.
Hey!
Hey! It's a nice, smooth Sunday evening.
It is. We've both had busy weeks.
Yes, absolutely. Busy evenings, tired evenings as well from busy days.
Yeah.
So we won't keep people long for this episode, but we're going to share a beer, talk about some games, and see where it takes us. I was going to say talk about some games. I've only really got one game to talk about.
I've got.
So it might just be an episode review of one game, but let's open some beers. What are you drinking?
So this is a beer I had on deck last week, or last time we chatted, but just didn't have quite the time to drink it. It's from Jopen.
Nice.
It's their Koyt. It's the Gruit ale, which is a very interesting. Basically, Jopen, who've been open. Jopen's been open since 1994, but they have found they're using the OG recipe of beer before hops.
Oh,
from 1407. So let me read the. There's a bunch of flavor text, so give me a second. On the left side, this is not just any Dutch craft beer you're holding right now. Beat boring, that's our motto, meaning that everything we brew is abnormally delicious and definitely different to contrast the common, but only you can be the judge, so open up, take a sip, let the taste times roll. Oh, that's their generic one, sorry. The other side of the label is, this beer is made with Gruit, a blend of herbs. Every year we dive into Dutch nature and hunt for sweet gale. Discover menthol aromas and a mildly sweet taste with notes of caramel. It's spicy and warming. Gruit beers are beers brewed with botanicals and herbs. Cool fact, this beer is based on a historic Haarlem recipe from 1407. So it's, where's the ingredients are water, Gerst, it's been the one part, wheat, oats, Gruit, yeast.
You're saying like a Groot, as in the Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy tree?
No, it's Grutus and fruit with a G. I think it's probably Groot. But yes, the point is it's botanical beer recipe. From 1407.
Okay. Herby.
So I just thought I picked it up when I was in the Netherlands way back in September, and it was like, there's no way I'm not trying this out on the podcast.
Yeah, fair. Nice. Good. I am going for a bit of a bigger beer this evening. I'm only having one beer this evening, just to see me out for the night. It's an 8.4% double IPA called High Performance Machine from Pressure Drop. I don't remember ever seeing a double IPA from Pressure Drop before, or at least having a double IPA from Pressure Drop. So I wanted to know what it would be like. Very limited flavour text. High-powered hops combined in this delicious double IPA. Go on, live your fruit salad fantasy. Tasting notes: pine, pineapple, mango. Hops are Idaho 7 and a Zaka. That's pretty much it. It was brewed a little while ago, so it's actually best before in about a month's time. Ooh, interesting. Okay, so it's like 4 months old. Right, cool. Fine. I mean, it doesn't say drink fresh on here. Oh, no, it does. Serve, drink fresh. Boo. I should have checked, shouldn't I, before I picked it up. But, oh, well. We'll see what the Pressure Drop is like. And come back to the Gruit, or Gruit.
Yeah, maybe it's Gruit. I forgot to mention, it's a boisterous, so it was in a bottle for those of you not just listening, but it's at 8.5%.
Nice.
Because that makes sense for when they used to make beer, didn't really make it weak.
Absolutely.
But on the pour, I could smell the malts coming off of it. And I'm assuming these aromas from the botanicals.
I didn't expect it to be that colour.
Yeah. It's very... Yeah, it's just like... almost red? A bit like a red cola. It's got the light diffusion and brownness of a cola, but it you can see a redness on the bottom that just is a little wrong there.
Yeah.
It smells quite a little sweet, heavy on the malts, lightly floral. It poured with probably a finger of head, which disappeared quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Oh, that's really good. It's an incredibly unique beer. It actually tastes a bit thin. There's no way I would get 8.5%. Like, I just mean, like, the mouthfeel.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts like it's going to, like, be a bit of a punch of a malty, heavier beer.
Okay.
And then there just stops. and it finishes quite light. And that's where I think the botanicals are coming in. And on the finish, I've got this, like, light malty sweetness on my tongue, and then a whole bunch of other light touches that are hard to individually grab. Yeah, this is definitely not made like regular or like modern beers. You can tell immediately. I think it's super dangerous just because although there's quite a lot, the finish is reasonably long. The things in the fish are quite light, so you could, if you weren't paying attention, you could be like, okay, so there's a mild sweetness.
Mm-hmm.
And like when I say that, I mean it's like quite reserved, not honeyish, not cloying, just like a, like I said, like that. It feels like when you have quite a heavier malt forward boozy beer and you haven't had a sip for 2 minutes. It feels like that after like 20 seconds. If that makes sense.
Okay.
So it's got that lingering taste of like I had something bigger, but it doesn't ever taste bigger. Really interesting.
Nice.
And I wonder if it's just that the botanicals. Yeah, I'm getting a lot more of them on these later sips. They're just like on top of covering up, changing the initial taste. Yeah, so usually I think, would I have this again? I'm not sure I can say right away. Definitely happy I'm trying it. I think it's definitely worth looking out for. But it's like, yeah, the balance is so weird. And you know me, I like an interesting taste curve, and this is an interesting taste curve, but it's quite a boring one, I guess. Like I said, it's like it feels like it's going to accelerate and does the exact opposite. And then there's interesting lingering, but I find myself wanting to like take bigger sips, and I realize it's because I want that, like, I want it to have more heft. That first taste just really invokes this like bigger, maltier, heavier beer. And I wonder if it's just because it is 8.5%, but it's not made like a boozy beer. So like I'm getting a bit of that alcohol in, and my brain's just like, this is how I'm used to the dots connecting. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that, and then we'll see how I feel at the end. Maybe when I'm not influenced by expectations or where the heck my brain is doing. How's yours?
Fair. Okay. It's as you would expect from a double IPA. It's very sort of solidly blocked in colour, very sort of orange. Not a huge amount on the nose, but there's a nice, very light sweetness to that, which is a bit unusual. It's not quite what you get from sort of the sweetness that you normally sort of find on a double IPA. I know they did say fruit salad, so maybe there's a little hint of something else. It's like almost a bit of like a stronger like fruit squash. When you make like a double concentrated fruit squash, you put just that little bit too much in, and it gives you that little bit of sweetness to that flavour as well. This has got that in the nose. Oh, that's nice. Okay. It's not quite a juice bomb. But it's definitely much more in that sweet fruit camp than a lot of, kind of the last few year modern double IPAs have been. But almost not quite a critic kind of backing to it. I think the pininess that is coming through, that now comes through much better, when it mixes with that fruity front sort of flavour, it kind of gives a slight acidic kind of flavour to it, just very, very lightly. It's almost... it's almost when you feel a bit ill and you kind of, you might burp and have a bit of reflux or something. But you've eaten something incredibly sweet, and you get that slightly acidic sweetness in there. This has that for like a split second as it's moving through those flavors. So where you've got that fruity sweet beginning to it, and it moves into that kind of more piney, slightly bitter sort of finish. There's just this midpoint where the two kind of merge, and it makes it a little bit sickly, a little bit acidic. Not much, but just a touch. I imagine that will go after I've drank more of it as I get used to that shift between these sort of flavors. But both of those flavors individually, so it's a lovely, soft, smooth start to it. That lovely fruitiness sort of kicks straight in. I think they said sort of pineapple. Definitely getting a bit of that, bit of orange as well in there. Definitely a bit of mango. And as I say, as it moves to that piney kind of finish, so it's a nice sort of, I suppose, very ripe sort of stone fruit finish. Not pure kind of pine. There's that little bit of fruitiness still in that finish as well. But yeah, that shift between is just a little uncomfortable, let's say. But as I think it will lessen as I drink through this. I've already drank almost half the glass, to be fair, just to try and understand what's going on with that flavour. But yeah, it's a lovely start. It's a lovely finish. It's just something in the middle, that flavour, that change in the middle, which isn't quite hitting for me.
It sounds like we both have slightly jarring taste curves.
I mean, this is interesting because it's almost not quite a taste curve. It's kind of it's A to B, and there's just something in the middle which is kind of you almost you're just going through something which adds this where they mix together. Yeah, interesting. We'll see what it feels like, what it tastes like towards the end of the episode. But I think, as I said at the top of the show, this is probably going to turn into just a bit of a review of one game. And when I said I'd only played one thing, that's not actually true. I have played a couple of other things, but only like 10 minutes of each of them.
Right.
So I picked up, God, I can't remember what it's called, the convolutedly named Star Wars game, Jedi Survivor,
this
or
is
Jedi Fallen Order Survivor, or
the
Eye of
Ubisoft
Tiger
open
Survivor.
world one?
No, it's the Respawn one.
So
Outlaws is the Ubisoft open world one, and Survivor, I'm sure it's just...
This is the sequel to the one you played a few years ago?
Yes, so it is. Okay, it is just called Star Wars Jedi Survivor, but it is the sequel to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. So it follows the same character, Cal Kestis, but I've only played like 10 minutes of it.
Did you finished Fallen Order?
So I finished Fallen Order, yes.
I can't remember if you actually finished it. But you're very good at actually finishing games.
Yeah, occasionally. And I did finish Alan. And again, another thing I played only like 10 minutes of last weekend was Alan Wake 2. Not realizing, I only had 10 minutes left to play.
Oh, so that's like actually such a frustrating moment.
I sat there like, I'm going to finish Alan Wake 2 tonight. I've got like, Kim's gone out. I've got the evening. I'm going to do it. And like 10 minutes later, I'm like, oh, it's done. Okay, cool. So
time to go to bed.
Yep. I did that, and then picked up Survivor. So I played a little bit of it, and it is as expected so far. It's the same as Fallen Order. It's an action adventure game. You're playing as a Jedi with a lightsaber and a few powers. What I like is that he's bobbling through Coruscant. In the sort of the opening.
I was going to ask where it started.
Yeah. So he's going around sort of the lower levels of Coruscant as well. So it's not kind of up in the sky. It's kind of the slums, and there's barely anything like that. I mean, the mission is that there is a spaceship that you've managed to, or your little robot friend has put like a disabling device on. So it was about to fly away, and then you disabled it, and it kind of comes out to crash, and you've got to make your way through the level to get to it, basically.
Aha.
So that's the sort of the opener to it. And yeah, it's kind of as expected so far. But as I say, I played 10 minutes. So it's going to be something I return to talk about more in the coming weeks, because it will probably, hopefully, hold me enough, as Fallen Order kind of did.
Yeah, if I recall, it did nothing exceptionally, but also nothing poorly. It feels like Respawn's recipe for Star Wars game is Star Wars game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was
like, I feel like Disney has like pivoted towards with like their latest, the things that have been kind of been released. I hear some people really like them, some people don't, but like there's not polarizing anything. It's just like, yes, we're middle of the roading. Sometimes that's fine. Yeah,
I think unless you heard a bunch of the discourse around The Acolyte, which was the latest TV show that came out a couple of months ago now, maybe a little bit longer, 3 months ago. Lots of people, it's the whole insane DEI bandwagoning kind of thing. Like, oh my god, it's a woman. Oh my god.
Yeah, I don't count that as non-polarizing content. That's just...
Yes, yeah. And I think it was, again, it was for me at least, it was a very middling show. But one which had great fights and had some interesting characters that we now won't see because they decided to cancel the second season.
Oh, really?
Almost, yeah, like a week after it finished ultimately, and they introduced Darth Plagueis, or it's what people assume to be Darth Plagueis. Yes. So it, as you say, I think Fallen Order, which was the first game, was good. It was fine. More Star Wars, and I think this will be much the same. I would guess. But yeah, more to report on.
For sure.
But the thing I have played, and which I want to do a review of, is Neva, Neva, which is the new game from Nomada Studio, who previously made Gris, which all of us enjoyed.
Yes.
And
I did not realize this was the Gris people somehow.
Yes. And as with Gris, I think that was Devolver Digital published. This is Devolver published as well. It is, for anyone that hasn't played Gris, you'll probably find that for a couple of pounds now on Steam or on some storefront. It's maybe 4 or 5 years old, I guess, 2019, 2020-ish.
Is it really?
And it is, it must be.
Don't say that. I feel so fucking old these days, man.
No, it's
2018 December. Wow. So I think I played it in 2019.
Yeah.
Oh, I think
So Neva is releasing almost 6 years after. It came out a couple of days ago, or came out just last week. I got a code through Devolver, and I have really enjoyed it.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Neva is. It is fucking beautiful. As Gris was, but this, I think, it's not quite as... I mean, it's still a very painted kind of landscape in what it's doing. There's just a bit more detail, I think, in Neva than there was in Gris.
Well, Gris had the art sort of being part of the mechanics in a certain way, or at least like so it seems like this might just be neat places with good art style. Is that true? Like you're not influencing the look of the world?
You're not influencing the look of the world, no. The game follows, I think she's called Alba, who's the girl you play as, and the wolf cub Neva. You play as Alba, and Neva kind of accompanies you around. And as you play through the game, can do various different, or assists in things like attacking and stuff. And that's one of the major differences between Gris and Neva, is that there's combat in Neva.
Interesting.
But it's an interesting sort of level of combat in that it doesn't... I was going to say it doesn't challenge you. It does challenge you, but not in a like crazy kind of way. It's not button mashing. It's not trying to kind of dodge and hit and do. it's a little bit more floaty. It's a little bit more light. And whilst I had moments with the combat in Neva where I made a mistake and died, usually it was where I could pick up and go, okay, I know the pattern. I can see where I made my mistake. And I don't think it really wants to challenge you that much, because a lot of the point of this game is as with Gris, it's the experiencing of the world, it's the story, it's moving through the environments, and it's much more the sort of the puzzle platforming kind of elements which are predominant within this game, as Gris was entirely sort of puzzle platforming. It doesn't go necessarily so far as Gris does in terms of sort of the abilities that you can have. It's a little bit more grounded in some of it, but you still have elements where you can jump in the air and you come down with your attack and it will break through the ground.
Right.
You can kind of like double jump and dodge as well. So there's elements in this where you're platforming, but using the attack to do things to enemies, which will elevate you sort of further into the sky to kind of move up kind of through the platforming sort of sections. And it's not just sort of standard platforming where you're going across and jumping from platform to platform. You're having to manipulate enemies and things to actually be able to kind of do that. And sometimes you're manipulating the environment as well. So you hit a gong and some more towers will rise, and then you jump back and jump back and jump back. But you have to then hit that gong again to get it to change. So there's a way to be able to do that. You've just got to kind of figure out how to do that.
It's like dynamic puzzles, not that flavor. Excuse me. The platforming rather than the like chaining 5 different abilities to like do the thing.
So do I get to a point where you have to do that? Not really. I think Neva works in a way that you're moving through sort of chapters. I think there's maybe 6 chapters, maybe 7 with sort of the end chapter, but it moves you through the seasons.
Oh.
So the kind of the world that you're experiencing, and at least the tone and the color palette, shifts through this kind of story, which works very, very well with the theme that kind of runs through with this. Neva is ultimately a game where you are kind of just living your life with Neva and Neva's mother, and this kind of, I suppose, infestation, this kind of plague, these almost no-face from Spirited Away, this kind of no-face looking kind of beings start to attack, very black kind of silhouetted bodies with white sort of faces, almost as if they are wearing kind of masks. They sort of start to infest the land, and you have to basically battle your way through the land. And I don't know, there's no kind of big exposition given to it. There's no big sort of story beats given to why they're doing this or anything. I think it's more of something's happening to our environment, and we should, we've got to live here. So we're just trying to get by and get through this experience. But it works very, very well as a story, moving through the seasons, and actually having an experience of Neva, the wolf cub, as you start out, actually growing through the seasons. It's quite fast kind of growth, and by the end of the game they're sort of adult in size, let's say, but it's one of those kinds of games. I don't think Gris elicited quite as much emotion as Neva has from it. I don't know whether that's again because I have kids. I had a child when Gris came out, but there's very much moments in this where I'm just like streaming with tears, and I was just sort of like, just sat there like gobsmacked, like, oh, of course I can see that they've done this. Now that it's happened, I'm like, of course this is where this was going, and just like, whoa. But it's very emotional. It hits a lot. The thing I would say with that emotion, even though it still hit me, I played this in small chunks. So I probably played maybe not quite a whole chapter at a time, but close to a whole chapter at a time. So maybe an hour sitting over 5 or 6 hours kind of thing. It's maybe about 5 or 6 hours long. I would say this game would be experienced if you had 5 or 6 hours just in one hit, through, because you will get all of that emotion. You'll get all of the intensity from some of the battles. You will get all of the outlet from kind of what happens after sort of boss battles and things like that. And I say kind of boss battles, there are kind of large encounters towards the end of these chapters.
Yeah.
That a little bit more, unlike the puzzles, the kind of end encounters do challenge you a little bit more in terms of what have you learned? And then you kind of apply the thing that you might have just been able to kind of get, or the thing you've had for the last kind of hour to move through the environment. You can then start using that kind of in those encounters and things as well. So it's very, very good. And I think that there's some moments in this game which are like with Gris, there were moments that were just so beautiful that I'm like, I'm just going to leave the character here because this is such a
I remember like just
atmospheric kind of image, and it's similar with Neva, but actually because of the combat, you don't get the opportunity necessarily to sit
I was
there
just going to ask,
it.
but like even in Gris, sometimes just the dynamics of the world meant that you couldn't quite stop and enjoy the world, and I can only imagine if now you're not just sort of functionally fighting the world, but fighting things in the world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But there is downtime, so you're not, unlike Gris, you're not kind of, there's not that time pressure necessarily with the changing of the world. So the pressure comes from the combat, and actually once you've done the combat,
once you've
you can have that bit of a rest. And not to sort of spoil too much, but they do some very clever things with the environment as well in some of the later levels with regard to sort of the combat and the platforming encounters. So it's not just sort of standard moving through the world platforming, you're going up, you're going down, you're fighting things on the way. There are some elements where they do use the environment very cleverly to challenge that little bit more, and I think it's just like, it is a joy to play. At no point when I was playing through this did I think to myself, oh, I don't want to do that, or oh, that's a bit rubbish. Every single thing that I hit through this, I'm like, yes, I've done that. Brilliant. That was really fun to do. Oh, that's challenged me in a way that I haven't experienced yet in the game. Great. Will it come back? I don't know. Because similarly with Gruit, it moves quite of a pace where they'll introduce something new, you'll use it for that chapter, and then you might not need it again. You might still use it, or something.
But it
changes.
might not be integral.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Integral.
Exactly.
Integral's the maths thing.
When you integer, but that's slightly different. But it's I think the combination of just how beautiful and atmospheric this game is. The music is fucking fantastic as well through it. And one of the really good but slightly heartbreaking things in this is that you have the ability, so Neva might run off at points or disappear from the screen, and you can hit triangle on the pad, and Alba will call for Neva. It's almost the only dialogue there is in this game. Right? I think it might be the only dialogue there is in this game. It's just her calling for Neva, but it comes through the DualSense, so it comes through the pad. So it's actually like really close when it sort of says it, and it stands out massively. And there's a moment in the game where you can call for Neva, and it's a little bit sort of heartbreaking.
I was going to say,
I was like, I don't like the thing happened. Yeah. I'm like, I don't want to press the button. I'm not going to press the button. I'm like, oh, I just have to see what happens when I press the button. And I did, and I'm like, oh my god, that's fucking brutal. So it even in that sense, all of these like small touches,
but that's also
that they have.
Like super important because like it tells you the detail they've put into the ports, right?
Yeah,
because it's out on PC, PS, and Xbox, I believe.
I would imagine it's on Xbox as well. Yeah,
yeah.
If not Switch as well, maybe.
Oh yeah, I would imagine it's on all the things.
Yeah, whilst it is a kind of a beautiful game, and again, just to mention that, it's beautiful in terms of the atmosphere and the vibrancy of the kind of some of the I say the vibrancy, but also the desolation that you get in some of the environments. But it does the thing where it layers and layers and layers. So you're moving through the environment, you're moving at this speed, but half of the background is only moving at half speed, so it sort of stays behind, and then the background farthest background is not moving or is moving at such a small thing that you have that dynamic sort of shift through the environment as well. And now I've said that, I can't remember what we were talking about.
I was saying, the hell was I saying?
The detail. We're talking about detail.
No, but nah.
Yes. I've derailed us, but to talk more about the game.
Yeah. I'm still sorting out my ADHD meds, and I know they're not great because I'm usually fine with, I'm usually so aware that I will lose tethers, that I will make jumps, that I keep track of the tethers and I can find them.
Yes.
And now I'm unable to find them.
Yeah.
I'm probably losing them more often,
out.
right?
Oh, really?
Less often, right? I'm probably being less distracted, but I don't have I've lost the ability to deal with when I get distracted. Anyway, yeah, so the art style is great. It's not... Oh, yes, we were talking about the DualSense yelling at you. Yes. Obviously, if the Switch or even a Steam Deck, that would be great.
Yes.
Although I think maybe less so, because I would imagine part of what that is hearing the game from your TV, and then this particular sound from closer, not just hearing that sound closer, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think that...
Because it makes that sound more important because it is isolated?
Absolutely. It's a level of immersion.
Yeah.
For at least for the PlayStation.
Yes, but I don't think anyone else has speaker
they don't. So you can get it on Switch as well.
Oh yeah, Switch has... I guess you could dock your Switch, and the Switch does have a speaker?
I don't know.
I know there's bloops that come out of the Joy-Cons, but I don't know how... That's general bloops. But also, yeah, who's doing that? Yeah, I mean
it's definitely a game that I appreciated playing on a larger screen because of that level of detail. There's a couple of moments in this where it zooms out just a touch too much for me. And so Alba was quite small on the screen, and I'm having to do some platforming elements, and that made it a little more difficult. So I can imagine on a Switch or on a Steam Deck, actually that's maybe quite a difficulty because you've got this tiny little dot kind of moving around the environment that you're having to control. But yes, absolutely. The kind of the immersion that I got from the DualSense and the PlayStation was great because it kind of just made me feel like I'm next to them because of that proximity of that sound, whereas the environment and everything else was happening over there, kind of coming out of my TV speakers. So it does, or it did pull me in that a little bit more. It's a very clever little feature, which obviously being used a lot more on PlayStation games. Almost every game I play now has something
on there.
You do something and it will give you a sound that comes out of
the key to a feature like that is how little effort it's needed to make to use it smartly to make an impact. If you think about the Switch and ports and all the little things the Switch could do, or even 6-axis and stuff, and how in the PS3 and Xbox 360 era, no one used 6-axis stuff because, that's a lot of effort to code things that only one, and not even the main population buying games could use. But this is I know enough about code and games, but it's you send Seinfeld that way. It's obviously more complicated than that. And I'm not. I really don't want to discount the planning time it takes to use it well, but it's just a different beast than something like these. Weirdly, this is pretty unique to PS5. Well, PS controllers, but the other stuff that tends to be unique tends to be complicated stuff like the 6-axis. And that's why you couldn't have Kinect. And it's also why even if you made just an Xbox game, because all the Xboxes didn't come with a Kinect, you couldn't make a, like, if you have a Kinect, this is slightly better, because that's so much effort, but you still have to sell the game without it, so you can't actually make something, like, integral.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway,
there's a game coming out, which was in the PlayStation State of Play. I can't remember what it's called. Something about something Candle, like a weird, almost Tim Burton-esque horror sort of vibe to it. But it's coming out just on standard consoles and probably on PC. But also, it's coming out as a PSVR game. So there's a shift in perspective in that game, and whether they were making just a PSVR 2 title and went actually. They haven't sold many units. It's a very easy switch to change the perspective and actually play it in a slightly different way and base the camera in a 2D sort of perspective and side-scrolling now and that sort of stuff. Versus, as you say, kind of going, actually, we're making a game and we don't have the ability to change that perspective as such, but also we can't then make a game where you have to wave your arm because people don't have the arm waving capturing device.
Yeah.
There's only 10% of people that have that, so we're only going to sell to 10% of those 10% rather than the entire Xbox kind of install base, essentially.
Yeah.
So I can see where the DualSense is a very clever little addition to go, it's throwing some sound, and we can just switch where that sound is coming from. Astrobot did it very well as well, as you would expect from a first party kind of game. But
I think also it's like, because the sort of barrier to entry is reasonably low, once a couple people did it to good effect, it's very easy to think, oh, that thing, we could totally do that thing, because it's not going to cost a lot, right?
Yes, yeah.
Which is, I think, why a lot of it tends to be these, like, isolated audio cues. Right? And I'm sure there's, like, other interesting things you could do, but it's very easy. It's, like, almost so straightforward that if you have a moment that you want to, like, hit poignancy of this sound, you just put it on the controller.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which, again, no, I'm not knocking that. It obviously fucking works. Do more of stuff like that. It's just, sad when I play most games. When I play games, they're often with headphones on, right?
Yeah.
Which is weird because I live alone.
So interestingly, I've experienced it both with headphones on and not. So I played a couple of times, or played probably most of it without headphones, and having that connection through the DualSense with Alba calling Neva and the sound coming out of the DualSense. But when I had it on headphones, it definitely highlights the sound. So it is coming, almost on a different band kind of.
Oh, okay, so they have
everything else
mastered it
on headphones. Yes,
similarly.
absolutely. But I don't know how that works, or at least how that comes across if it's all coming through the TV. Headphones is an incredibly personal level of sound, with it being kind of immediately there, nothing else kind of around you. So I don't know how that would balance out on a screen. Even if a docked Switch, or even playing it just on a Switch, or maybe something like that with a Switch or a Steam Deck, it is that little bit closer to you. So if it is prioritizing that sound, it will cut through everything, and you get that effect from it. On the telly, maybe on an Xbox, or a docked Switch or something, or even playing on a PC, maybe without kind of headphones, maybe won't quite give you that same level. But yeah, it's a fantastic game. I think it's kind of almost, maybe not quite, but only because I experienced Journey as like the first that kind of game. So when I played Journey, I don't think I'd ever experienced anything like that before. Never is on a par, I would say, with Journey, but didn't quite hit me as much because I've had these previous experiences before. Absolutely. There's a little bit of, obviously there's a whole lot of Gris in this game.
Yes.
But there's also, I think it's the kind of, you're on the journey with the wolf. It feels like Journey in that sort of sense. You're moving through these environments. There's that passage of time to it as well. But it's also got a little bit of, a tiny, tiny bit of like Monument Valley to it. So again, Monument Valley in terms of you're maneuvering the world a little bit to solve. That's ultimately what that mechanic was, maneuvering the world to solve the puzzle. And it feels like, probably just because of the quite geometric architecture that is in this game, a lot of this game is in nature, is in the world and the environment, and kind of moving through forests and up mountains and stuff. And then suddenly there's this, not quite juxtaposition, but there is a quite stark difference with the very geometric architecture that is set within this. Lots of arches, lots of high bridges. As with Gris, the architecture in that was incredibly geometric and quite ornate in its kind of nature. This follows a similar kind of thing. It's almost as if you're moving through like Gris 1,000 years later, when stuff has fallen apart and there's a few kinds of things that are only just working still.
Interesting.
But you get the tower, that kind of the shifting kind of stair platforms that are all within arches and are very kind of monotone in a lot of their colour as well. Or they might be two-tone between sort of, there's a platform here and there's a platform behind. You can't go on the one behind, but this is part of the structure, and we're giving you that depth to show you that movement of these kinds of elements. So it kind of gives a little bit of a contrast. But that contrast definitely made me think of Monument Valley, literally in terms of just the very geometric kind of way that things move and the manipulation of the world and just the way it kind of aesthetically looked in terms of its architecture. So I would imagine Monument Valley came out before Gris as well. That's probably like a almost 8 or 10-year-old game by now, Monument Valley. And I would think that had a bit of an influence on Gris, but probably not a huge amount. That's probably in development when Monument Valley came out, but it just feels a bit different in Neva. And I can't quite put my finger on why there's that difference between the two of them. I'd have to go back to Gris and play it to see why I feel that way about Neva. But yeah, there's definitely at least a vibe that I picked up on. I'm like, oh, it's quite sort of, maybe it's the movement of these elements and things like that. But yeah, something I can't quite put my finger on, but definitely reminiscent of Monument Valley, and very, very reminiscent of Journey, which is a fantastic game. And I think it's kind of one of those that if anyone enjoyed Gris, you would really enjoy this. Even if you don't quite want that combat experience.
Because it's not strenuous. It's
not strenuous, but there's also a narrative mode. So you can dull that combat down.
Interesting.
As well. I didn't. I just played it on normal, maybe.
Yeah, but you're a hardcore PC gamer. Sorry, PS5 gamer.
PS5 gamer, hardcore console man.
Yeah.
But I played it on just wanting the normal experience, thinking, okay, I just want to play it as it should be played. Almost. I do think this would be a good game again for Evelyn, who started playing Astrobot and a few other kinds of things, who's starting to get interested in these slightly more platformery kind of games.
Right.
I think if I gave her this in narrative mode, she would pick it up quite quickly and be like,
right.
Okay, I've got to double jump here. Great, I've got that. I understand it. Oh, cool. I've got to double jump, and then maybe I've got to dash. So I'm in the air and I can dash to get to that platform. Cool. Now I'm here and I've got to double jump to get to this one. Great, I can do that. Hooray.
Yeah. It's like the first third of Celeste puzzle.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And it does get a little more difficult platforming wise as you're moving through, because you're doing those extra kinds of bits. Suddenly you have to attack an enemy halfway through the air, and that might shoot you back up, and then you've got to double jump again and dash and things. It builds very, very well in
I was going to say, it doesn't sound like it ramps too quickly though.
It doesn't, apart from the last combat encounter.
The very final one?
The very final one.
Oh no.
It's not a massive jump, but it is a difference in the curve. Right, the curve is lovely and easy to get to that point, even in the combat. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, actually, I've really got to concentrate on this now. It's not just kind of like bash, 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 dash to dodge through the enemy, bash, 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 bash from behind, jump over it because it's going to charge at me, bash, 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 bash. It is that, but it's quicker. and the reach of the enemy attacks is so much more that as I'm playing it, I'm actively jumping away from them and then like dashing back towards them to try and get behind them. And so suddenly there was this kind of like, okay, my movement is jump, jump, dash, great, go and hit them. Jump, jump, dash, go and hit them. Or roll through them and hit them. And now I'm like, there's this directional element.
I was going to say that does sound a bit frustrating, just from a like design point of view. If like especially if someone's newer and like hasn't played these types of games, to figuring out that now you have to go backwards and then forwards when none of the rest of the game the rest of the game encouraged you just to rush forwards.
Yes,
just strategically rushing forwards, but always forwards. That's mildly disappointing, but also if it's the last battle and it has ramped you into trying different things, then that might just be a different thing. But it does seem a weird wrinkle to add for the not the last 2 or 5 battles, the last battle, and then you're done.
It does tee it up slightly in that it gives you multiple enemies in your combat encounters.
Oh,
they will appear on screen at like either end. But the thing with that is, I'm not going bash bash bash, change direction, bash bash bash. I can hit that one, jump over it. So I'm going this way. Hit them, jump over it, or dodge through them, and then go back that way. Hit that one, and then go to the next.
You're
enemy.
Still traveling forward. It's just between the two encounters with the enemies, forward changes directions, but you're not changing directions in your comboing or your attacking.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they tee it up slightly that this will come.
That you might have to think about other. Yeah,
I think that's it's not to the game's detriment that the combat is a bit floaty and a little bit easy, but it does makes that jump to that final combat encounter like, oh, I wasn't quite expecting it to be this difficult.
You've teed me up in multiple ways not to expect that this is going to hurt.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one that even though I played it over those sort of shorter periods, actually when I did that final combat encounter. I attached enough to these characters that I let out an audible yes when I managed to beat them. It's not often that I'm kind of, I never stand up and I'm like, yes, I've done it, hooray! But literally, I'm like, yes, as I did it, fist clenched, and I'm like, oh, cool, done. I'm like, now for the tears.
Right.
You just get the rest of the final chapter of the game sort of thing. It's a beautiful game, absolutely beautiful.
Sounds great.
And it's one of those where I think there's a few collectibles through it as well. Not difficult to get, but a few of them are. You have to think about the order that you're doing some of the puzzling in.
Right.
And I think it's a short enough game that I might return. I'd have to see how that works, whether I have to play the whole thing again and collect everything again, or whether it's a case of me being able to go back.
Chapter 1.
Cool, I missed this one. How do I know that I've missed that one? I don't know. But if I can work that out, I might play through it again just to pick those up, as it's such a short experience. It probably won't hit me quite as much as it did in the first one because I know what's coming, I know what to expect. But yeah,
well, especially if you're able to bounce out of order, you won't quite have that same narrative immersion.
Yeah, I think you can. I think you can pick chapters again. To shift, just to finish out on, to shift away from Neva very slightly. Just to finish on Neva. Play the game. You'll love it, dude.
Yeah.
I think
I've
Lucy,
added it to my wish list. I don't know if you saw me poking at my phone.
Yeah. And Lucy will as well. This is absolutely like it's
one of those
evolution of Gris. It's another game in that mold, just doing something slightly different.
Right.
But just to shift away from that slightly, going back to Alan Wake 2, big old game, right?
Yeah.
Long old game, 30-odd hour game, probably. I'm going to find actually how long I've played it for. I'll have a quick look. But when I played Alan Wake 2, as I kind of expected, it's a bit of an open-ended final to that game. The last few cutscenes after you've gone through the credits and things, they open the game up again and stuff. And I believe it was added afterwards. Let's see. Alan Wake. But there is like a new game plus mode, which is called, I think it's called Final Chapter or the Final Chapter, something like that. And the game alludes to the idea that that essentially you should play it again, right? And I'm not playing that again. That's a long, old, intense game.
Yeah,
I have not got that in me to play through Alan Wake 2 again. But having a very quick Google, so I'm like, well, why would I play this again? It's like, there's a different ending. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake.
That's what YouTube is for.
Yeah.
Sorry, if your game only changes the ending when I play it again, but I'm playing the same things, that's just bad design.
So I think there's a few changes through it. But again, it's not changing the majority,
And again, I'm not saying that
game.
they should make a second game. I'm saying don't do this bullshit.
Yeah. Absolutely. PlayStation app doesn't tell me how long I've played. It will only tell me currently on the homepage. The last 3 games I played, which was I played less than an hour of Jedi Survivor. I played less than an hour of After Us, which is a game I played on PC. But I got not a trophy. I got points in the PlayStation Stars thing for playing that. I also, just to finish us out on, I played Astrobot again. A game which I had beaten the last boss on, but they have just released some free speedrunning levels.
Oh.
So I jumped back into Astrobot to do the speedrunning level, which ultimately is one level with one of the mechanics through the game. And I took me, I think, about 40 odd seconds to run it through. And I managed to get down to about 37 seconds.
So the first time you played it, 40-ish.
Yep.
And
I think I played it maybe about 5 times to get myself down to about 37-ish seconds.
Okay.
Just 37 and like 3/10 or something like that.
Sure, yeah.
The current top score, current best time, 27 seconds. And I'm like, I've cut 3 seconds off. How the fuck am I cutting another 10 off? Absolutely no chance of doing that. Someone is completely magic in terms of...
Or there's just some dumb break. Although, when
probably.
it's that short, it's probably just someone's insane.
Yes.
Not that that type of quick twitch insane versus, like, I see the Matrix insane, both of which are legitimate speedrunning insanities.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's more quick twitch insanity because the top 10 are all within like 10 tenths. They're all within a second of each other ultimately.
Oh yeah.
If not 5/10ths of a second of each other, kind of thing. So it is just a bunch of people who are very good at playing this game. But they are releasing, I think, 6 free speedrun courses over the next next 5 weeks. So releasing 1 a week. So I should be going back to Astrobot kind of weekly to be able to play this next sort of speedrun element, and they're all free. So it's kind of like,
I'm not sure. I mean, I
enjoyed the game.
I was like, I didn't play the game, but I think I'm just too much of an old man. Like, I just don't see myself being like, that game I enjoyed, a speedrunning level's released, I'm gonna come back to it. So that's really interesting.
I think there is an element of completionism about this as well.
Yeah,
so with the collection of bots through the game, the level you can also collect bots through. There's new bots per level, right? So suddenly I'm like,
that's smart.
Cool. There's 2 more bots in this level. I'm going to go back and I'm going to get those because I also spent time platinuming it as well. So I only had like 4 trophies that I needed to get to platinum it. So I went.
That makes a lot more sense. Just knowing your brain, and also it's because like speedrunning's a very specific category of urge, we will say. Also, just to go back to your sidebar, according to How Long to Beat, Alan Wake's main story is about 18.5 hours, and the main story and sides is about 25.
Okay.
With completionist about 30. So chances are you probably played like 21 to 22 hours, I'm guessing.
Yeah, middling sort of 20. Yeah.
Just
I did get a lot of the like words of power and collectibles, and annoyingly not all of them. Again, it's kind of one of those where I know that I've got like one somewhere of this collectible to get somewhere in the world, and it's just like, I can't be bothered. Like,
why?
It's fine if it's like, if it's like Astrobot was very, very good at delivering those trophies. Like, you've just done a thing that you didn't really think about. Here's a trophy for it. Like, amazing, brilliant. And then a few, maybe like 6 to 8 of them were kind of very specific in what you sort of had to do. So that was more of I went and had a look, and I'm like, well, I went back in and played the game, and the trophy popped for doing the speedrun. I'm like, I wonder what trophies I have got. And I'm like, there's only like 5 left, 4 left. Let's have a look at what they are. And luckily, you can now reveal what a hidden trophy is. So I can be like, cool, what's this? Google. Great, how do I do that? Fine, let's go and do that. And just spent that like 10 minutes, maybe, doing the things. I'm like, cool. I have a platinum trophy for no reason whatsoever. Amazing. Slight achievement. Hooray. Yeah. Not a waste of time, but some...
as long as you enjoy it, right?
Time. Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. And I think I'd spend more time in Astrobot, which is probably why I play those speedrunning levels when they come out. But that's my games for the last sort of week and a bit. It's probably a good place for us to finish out the episode.
Yeah.
We'll return back to beers. The Jopen. I've written Groot, and then I've written Gruit.
Yeah.
Down. I can't remember what it was called.
It was called the
Is it
Koyt.
Groot? Oh God, right.
Koyt. But also, I'm recording, so I've been taking notes. So you could. I don't know why you wrote anything down.
Who knows? I don't know.
Although, actually, I've realized I wrote pressure drop DIPA, and I can't remember what yours was called.
I'll tell you momentarily.
Yeah. I was just like, as far as I've been writing notes. I'm like, not well though. I think it didn't change. I would say.
Okay.
I was still kind of like, this is interesting. I'm really glad I had it. 1407 seemed like an okay time, but I'm glad I don't live then for multiple reasons. It really kept teasing a punch. I loved I think the problem was I liked the nuance of the botanicals, but because it just started with that kind of heavier push, just like it sort of set me up to expect a big, something closer to the 8.5%, and it didn't, and so I sort of put me on the back foot to appreciate the herbal stuff. But again, I think that's definitely like an interpretation of this beer where your mileage might vary. I think it's good beer. I think it's definitely worth trying, especially because we don't often get to taste even modern interpretations of very specific windows to the past, like
absolutely,
like local Harlem Dutch beer recipe from 1407. And it wasn't like just a curiosity, right? It wasn't just like if you stumble into this, you should have that just to learn something about history. It was just like, this is still a decent beer. I just like, now that I've had it, if I was at a bar and they had other bottles and they're I might have a second, but I probably wouldn't seek it out.
I think it in that sort of sense, it sounds a bit like the kind of the Tint Meadow.
Yes, that's
a beer,
which weirdly was on tap this weekend at both the Hop Knocker and it was on tap at the Hop Knocker 2 weeks ago, but it was on tap at the Station House on Friday, and I was like, this is so strange. Because you just expect this to be in bottles in a corner, right? Like,
yeah. The rep had come to Durham for a weekend and gone, ooh, let's put our beer here. Yeah, nice. But it sounds like they're trying to bring that traditional way of doing things, or at least what they think that traditional way of doing things was, with their slightly modern interpretation on it.
I mean, crucially, also the things like water would be phenomenally different, and because the recipes are so straightforward, boy, would that have a change.
Yeah, massively. Good, nice. Is that the last of your sort of Dutch?
No,
beers,
I have two. I have two dark Jopens that I've been saving, but we just. Yeah, I mean they're heavier beers. But that would be the last. Was these two extras from Jopen? They're both kind of similar, so there are odds now that I save one for next week, but end up having the other on a bad day from work.
Come in, go to the new house, do a bit of decorating, and go. Big beer needed. Yeah, absolutely good. So the pressure drop, which was called Higher Performance Machine. No, not higher, just High Performance Machine. Sorry. That middle flavour, that acidic kind of change between the very fruity start and then the piney bitter finish, that did disappear the more I drank the beer. Maybe about halfway through the can, so a little way through, but it did disappear, and that kind of flavour profile became a lot smoother as I drank it, and merged that a little bit more. You know, the kind of quite stark difference between that fruity start and then that piney finish. They merge together quite nicely. So you're still getting a hint of fruit at the beginning, then you're getting the pininess at the end, but actually that middle area wasn't quite as brutal, let's say. It became much smoother as I drank through the beer. And it kept up that level of fruitiness, it kept that level of bitterness as well as I was drinking it. So it maintained its flavour, it just became that little bit easier to drink, that little bit smoother to drink. It's got a lovely mouthfeel to it as well. It is a lovely sort of fluffy, cloudy, smooth beer, especially for something at 8.5%. It feels very, very light. There's nothing heavy at all about this beer, especially after that acidic kind of flavour dissipated and everything started to be a lovely smooth sort of ride through this. But Pressure Drop again, I think dipping into dippers. I don't know how many they've done, but as I think I said at the top of the show, this is probably one of the first, if not the first dipper I've had from them. Bit of a rocky start, but a very, very good beer. By the time I'd finished it, so I would drink again, absolutely. But knowing what I'm going to experience, I think.
That makes sense. Sounds like we've both had not the most outstanding, but fine beer weeks. Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm glad I picked this evening over the other beer I picked up, which I'll drink next week. I think only because it is a beer from the Weekend Project, which both you and Lucy have drank. Yes.
Which
one?
It's another double IPA. It's got a squid or an octopus on the front. I can't remember.
It's good.
I don't know what it's called.
Spoiler alert. I'm pretty sure if it's the one I'm thinking of.
Nice, because when Lucy had the first Weekend Project beer,
it was the only one they had out.
Yes, they had. I think they had 3 out, but you could only get 1.
Yes, sorry.
And then you picked up like the 3 of them, I think, or 2 of the 3.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they got a bunch of new beers out.
Yeah, so they came out with at least another
6
3. Yes, the tree octopus is probably what you got.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
One, the tin is amazing.
Another 8.5% sort of double IPA. But they're 500ml cans as well. So, yeah. I knew it was just you and I tonight. So, a bit of a shorter episode. It didn't quite want a big old double IPA.
This was my backup, which was a 500ml. 440ml Wylam.
Nice. I haven't seen anything from Wylam down here for ages.
I think Ben at the Hop Knocker must have a good relationship with them because he often has their stuff. But they are dicks because they make a bunch of non-vegan beers.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, and he can get them on cask and keg, and their beers are actually quite good on cask.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh nope, can't have the cask this week. Cool. And it's like
up the road from you, aren't they? So
yeah, and it's like it's not like a milk stout or anything.
Sure.
But it's a darker beer, and it's like, nope, they've just put lactose in. I don't know why. God damn it.
Or is it like
it might be
some of their lighter beers? Is it because they've like filtered them and stuff like that as well? Yeah.
I can't. Yeah. I just know that for Wylam, I have to look them up basically.
Yeah, fair.
While most craft beer you can just reliably not worry unless it's like a milky stouty.
Yes. Yeah. Interesting. I was just thinking about this this pressure drop. It doesn't say anywhere on the can that it is vegan. It does.
Yeah. As you say,
there's just that.
Yeah, but also
suppose,
you really don't need the V. What you need to do is look at the ingredients because allergens are lactose is an allergen.
Yes.
Right. So that's the easiest way to tell for most beer.
Yeah. But I suppose that's the difficulty. Like, I know most modern macro beers are filtered.
Yes.
Right? Which has a process of non-vegan friendly process, essentially. So a lot of craft beer is not filtered because of the scale of which that is done.
Yes.
I suppose, and the processes and having the plant and the availability to do so.
So I mean, I think part of it is, exactly that. It's also, I think, often the filtering is literally just for, like, clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And hazy is, like, a thing people pursue. Like, it's just it's an artificial property that I think, for comparative reasons, has made it, like, a worse thing in craft, right?
Mm.
I am curious. So, for example, like neck oil, right?
Okay.
Given the way it's accelerated in the market, etc., and it's the right type of beer that, like, it's like at some point they might, Heineken might put the pressure on to do that, and then it's like, that's a thing. I don't know how easy it would be to find out when that choice is made.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's kind of one of those that with bigger companies that own these craft beer kind of arms or craft beer businesses within their company, apart from maybe monetary kind of cuts, actually, can we not necessarily reduce the level of hops, but can we get a better deal on these? Can we reduce this or can we change this just to bring the cost of brewing down slightly? Unless something like filtering is in that kind of mass way is going to change the cost of something, I don't know whether they would actually kind of touch that, because again, the craft beer market doesn't necessarily speak to vegans as such, but that's the kind of beer that vegans are going to drink, knowing how mass market beer is made. So whether they think, actually, we make Heineken, we make all of these other beers, they can't be drank by a certain proportion of people. People drink this. A broad range of people drink this, including vegans, vegetarians, lots of other people. Let's just keep it as it is rather than alienating them necessarily. Unless there is actually we can cut like 10 to 20% of the cost of this down by doing this. And the proportion of people who buy this beer is not that same percentage, ultimately. It's less than that. So we're losing custom, but we're still making money because we're changing the process to such a cost-reducing sort of way. When you're getting as a company into like analytics as much as that, of looking exactly at how many tenths of a pence that you're saving per can, you just fucking end it. Just don't worry about it. Just move on to another job instead.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. Well, that's it for us this week on that lovely, joyous note. Go to Out of Lies, to look at the beers that we have drank this evening, and to experience other articles and things that people are throwing up.
We're not the only assholes on that website.
Exactly. There's a few others. Lee, he chucks articles up. Kyle,
that
he's
asshole,
chucking
Lee.
stuff up. Yeah.
Ben, you're so mean.
You can go to our YouTube page. You can go to the Live YouTube page as well to see the video version of this. You can get us at Tanked Upcast on the socials. I'm at Nova_47. Aadil is
at the Omniarch.
And that's pretty much all of the places. If you want to chat to us, hit us up on one of those platforms or come to our Discord and we can shoot you a link to that if you like. Chat to us about beers, games, whatever you want in that sort of sense. I did have a pang.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier today, and I don't know why, I was thinking about playing Jedi Survivor. It's a weird fucking name. I was thinking about playing it, and then I thought, I remember The Acolyte. That was an alright show, you know. And then I had this pang, and I'm like, do you remember Geek Out Weekly? Like, in my mind.
I've been thinking about Geek Out Weekly lately, too.
I was like, man, wish I had more time with Aadil to chat about just all of this other tangential, geeky stuff and these TV shows and things. Like, I started watching Dragon Ball, I don't know what it's called. Dragon Ball Daima? It's like Daima.
I don't know.
So it's a new. I didn't know there was a new Dragon Ball show.
There's also new Bleach. I'm just so out of touch with anime.
Completely. But it's on Netflix. Right? The first 2 episodes of this are on Netflix. But it is set just after the Buu saga from Dragon Ball Z. So it's like it's injected in. I know they do this with the films. They kind of put them in.
But that's really interesting
the chronology
because
of stuff.
Dragon Ball GT came after the Buu saga, and then Dragon Ball Super came and ignored GT and came after the Buu saga, and now there's a third thing after the Buu saga.
Yep, I think GT is just ignored entirely.
Well, it wasn't made by Toriyama. Is that at all? Like, and so it. When he came back for Super, it's no one believes that GT is a thing. It's like a fever dream.
But GT introduced Super Saiyan 4, which is where they change color and they're slightly more
They
hairy,
grow their tails back.
Slightly more monkeyish, yes.
Yeah. Versus now you go Super Saiyan God in Super.
Okay. I haven't seen Super.
Blue hair.
Oh, yes. Okay, I've seen characters from Super.
Yeah. Sure. I was just like, I know you know of this because it's yeah. Cool. It's like a Kaioken with blue hair.
When did Super come out? Like 10 years ago in Japan? Yeah. Something like that, probably.
Yeah. Anyway, so I've been thinking about it, ironically, because I was like, you know what was great about it? So one, it came up in a conversation, someone talked about a thing, like, I talked about that movie on the podcast I used to have. And they're like, what the hell podcast is this? I'm like, oh, God. But also I realized, it turns out part of my dealing with ADHD and giving myself structure is like forcing structured fun. And actually, Geek Out Weekly was great for making me relax and watch shit.
Brilliant. I'm just going to take an hour and a half.
Well, I have to, right? Like,
yeah.
And it's so stupid to be like, because I got the code. We got the code for The Batman like 3 weeks before it hit theaters, right? And it was like, I gotta watch this movie before it comes out for this podcast I'm doing. Relaxing is so tough. But also, it apparently is because I don't do it enough.
Yeah. Absolutely. Maybe we don't bring the podcast back. I mean, I'd love to bring it back just to chat with you about other shit.
Yeah.
As well.
But I'm happy to talk about
maybe in your mindset, you just need to like doing a podcast this week. Oh, it's been cancelled.
See, because I don't do artificial deadlines. That's why I can't pretend like something is due and then make it due.
Yeah.
But
that's fair.
If I am on a podcast with you, I'm not going to fucking let you down. I'll watch this goddamn movie at 7 a.m. if I have to, right?
Just like, I haven't had enough coffee yet. What the fuck is
scrawling notes? Cheerios? I don't even understand what this means.
Yeah.
I don't know where my brain went to
Amazing.
Cheerios. But yeah, this has been a patented outro, by the way.
Completely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. We will see you soon. We've been Tanked Up. Goodbye.
Bye. I'm definitely not editing that. People are going to have to deal with it.
www.outoflives.net